Have you ever wondered what it takes to live a vibrant, active life well into your 90s? Picture this, a 93-year-old physician who still lectures weekly, writes books, tends a garden, and even hikes with his grandkids, climbing hills without breaking a sweat. I'm Dr. Edward Young, and at 53, I was told heart disease would end my life within a year. Yet here I am, decades later, thriving on a secret so simple you might not believe it. 5 everyday foods. Stick with me until the end of this video, because I'll reveal the exact longevity diet I've perfected over 60 years of medical research. Foods that can boost your immunity, transform your health, and help you enjoy a vigorous old age, no matter where you're starting from. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you like this video. You can help me continue to spread the old age lesson. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this video, please comment number 1. If you don't like it, comment number 0 to let me know, so I can make a better video for you. Now let's get started. 1. Sesame seeds. A tiny heart hero. Think sesame seeds are just a decorative sprinkle on your burger bun or a forgettable topping at the sushi bar. Think again. These unassuming little powerhouses are packed with omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and a treasure trove of nutrients that can work wonders for your heart and brain. They're not just a garnish, they're a quiet revolution in a tiny package, waiting to transform your health one spoonful at a time. Let me take you into the world of sesame seeds through a story that still warms my soul every time I think of it. Picture Martha Evans, an 83-year-old grandmother with a mop of silver curls and a smile that could light up a room when she had the energy to muster it. She shuffled into my office one rainy Tuesday, her cane tapping the floor like a metronome of exhaustion. For over a decade, her heart had been betraying her. She was tethered to a regimen of 6 pills a day, blood thinners, beta blockers, statins, you name it. Even then, climbing a single flight of stairs left her wheezing, her lips faintly blue from sluggish circulation, her hands trembling as she gripped the armrests of my chair. "Dr. Young," she said, her voice a fragile whisper, "I just want to live long enough to see my grandkids' weddings. That's all I'm asking for." Her eyes, misty and pleading, locked onto mine, and I felt the weight of her hopes settle into my chest. I'd seen cases like hers before, people drowning in prescriptions, their bodies too weary to fight the tide. But Martha, she had a spark I couldn't ignore. I leaned forward, scribbled a note, and handed it to her. "No more pills for now," I said. "Let's try something simpler first. Take a tablespoon of sesame seeds. Grind them fresh, none of that pre-ground nonsense. Mix it with a dollop of real, thick honey, the kind that sticks to the spoon, not that watery, fake syrup in a plastic bear. Have it every morning, and come back in a month." She raised an eyebrow, skeptical but desperate enough to trust me. For weeks later, the door swung open, and there was Martha. No cane, no shuffle, just a spring in her step and a grin that stretched ear to ear. "Dr. Young," she announced, plopping into the chair like a woman half her age, "my chest doesn't feel tight anymore. I walked 2 blocks to the bakery yesterday, and I didn't even need to sit down." I ordered the labs, barely containing my excitement. The results came back a week later. Her cholesterol had dropped from a stubborn 240 to a healthy 180, her triglycerides were in line, and her doctor, stunned, cut her meds down to 3. That was just the beginning. Within a year, she was down to a single prescription. Her circulation had pinked up her cheeks, and then came the moment I'll never forget. My inbox pinged with a video. Martha, twirling on a dance floor in a lavender dress, laughing as she spun with her grandson at his wedding. I watched it 3 times, tears blurring my screen, her joy a testament to the power of those tiny seeds. So, how do you harness this magic for yourself? It's simple, but the details matter. Start with raw, unhulled sesame seeds, white or black, doesn't matter, though black ones pack an extra antioxidant punch. Grind them fresh daily. A coffee grinder or mortar and pestle works best because pre-ground seeds lose their potency fast as the oils oxidize. You want that nutty, earthy aroma hitting your nose the moment they crack open. Take a heaping tablespoon of the powder and stir it into a teaspoon or 2 of real honey. Look for the raw, unfiltered kind, cloudy and rich, not the clear, runny imposters lining supermarket shelves. The honey's natural enzymes pair with the seed's lignans and healthy fats to supercharge your heart health. From there, get creative. Mix it into a bowl of thick Greek yogurt with a handful of berries for a breakfast that feels like a treat. Or blend it into a warm bowl of brown rice or oatmeal, letting the flavors meld into something comforting yet medicinal. You could even spread it on a slice of whole grain toast, though I'd add a sprinkle of cinnamon for an extra antioxidant kick. Make it a ritual, first thing in the morning, before the day's chaos sweeps you away, and stick with it. Consistency is key. Within weeks, you might notice your energy steadying, your pulse calming, and your mind sharpening as the omega-3s and vitamin E go to work. Sesame seeds aren't a cure-all, and they won't replace a doctor's care for serious conditions. But for Martha, and countless others I've seen since, they've been a game-changer, a humble, affordable ally in a world of overcomplicated fixes. So next time you see those little specks on your bagel, don't brush them off. Grab a bag, grind them up, and let them start rewriting your story. Your heart, and maybe your grandkids, will thank you. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. 2. Fermented soybeans. Gut gold. Fermented soybeans, natto to the Japanese, cheonggukjang in Korea, or simply that pungent stuff to the uninitiated, might just be the unsung heroes of longevity. They're slimy, sticky, and carry a whiff that could wake a coma patient, but don't let that fool you. Our ancestors, from ancient Asian villages to rugged farmsteads, swore by this funky powerhouse, passing down jars of it like heirlooms. Why? Because beneath that bold aroma lies a treasure trove of health benefits. A gut-reviving, immunity-boosting, life-extending marvel that modern science is only now catching up to. Packed with probiotics, enzymes, and nutrients like vitamin K2 and nattokinase, fermented soybeans don't just sit in your stomach. They go to work, repairing, balancing, and fortifying. Take George Miller, for instance. At 86, he'd been wrestling with type 2 diabetes for over 4 decades. I met him on a crisp autumn morning, sitting on his porch in a faded rocking chair, his hands trembling slightly as he recounted his story. 40 years of needles, he said, his voice gravelly and tired. Insulin shots every day, sometimes twice. Tingling in my toes so bad I couldn't feel the floor some mornings. My eyesight's been fading, too, cataracts creeping in like fog. I told my daughter, I'm tired of fighting this thing. George wasn't just exhausted. He was defeated, a man who'd spent half his life battling a disease that seemed to have no endgame. I handed him a small jar of fermented soybeans, traditional stuff, not the sanitized, flavorless junk you find in big box stores. 1 spoonful every morning, I told him. Mix it with a sprinkle of sesame powder if the smell's too much. He raised an eyebrow, skeptical, but promised he'd try it. 2 months later, I got a call. My blood sugar's not spiking like it used to, he said, a hint of surprise in his tone. By the 6-month mark, his doctor cut his insulin shots in half, a milestone he hadn't hit in years. A full year in, George was down to 1 shot a day. His toes weren't buzzing anymore, and his vision had stabilized enough that he ditched the magnifying glass for the newspaper. I ran into him at the park one Sunday, strolling hand in hand with his grandkids, a spring in his step I hadn't seen before. I've got hope again, he said, flashing a grin that lit up his weathered face. Didn't think I'd feel this good at my age. That's the magic of fermented soybeans. They don't mess around. The probiotics recalibrate your gut microbiome, taming inflammation and boosting digestion. Nattokinase, a natural enzyme, thins the blood and keeps your arteries clear, while vitamin K2 shuttles calcium where it belongs, your bones, and away from where it doesn't, your arteries. For George, it was like turning back the clock on a body worn down by time and disease. But it's not just about diabetes. Studies link this stuff to stronger immunity, better heart health, and even sharper cognition. Our ancestors didn't have the labs to prove it. They just knew it worked. Here's the catch. Not all fermented soybeans are created equal. Skip the mass-produced, pasteurized versions lining supermarket shelves. Those are gutted of their live cultures and potency. You want the real deal. Traditionally made, unapologetically sticky, with that unmistakable pungent kick. Hunt down a local Asian market or a small batch producer online. When you open the jar, it should look alive, threads of fermentation stretching like spiderwebs when you scoop it out. The smell might hit you like a freight train, but that's how you know it's legit. New to the game? Ease into it. Start with a teaspoon mixed into rice or broth to mellow the intensity. Grind some toasted sesame seeds into a powder and sprinkle it on top. It cuts the funk and adds a nutty warmth. Pair it with a drizzle of soy sauce or a dab of miso if you're feeling adventurous. Before long, you'll notice the difference. Energy that hums instead of sputters, a gut that feels settled instead of sluggish, and maybe even a little swagger in your step. George would tell you it's worth every funky bite, and he's got the grandkid-approved park laps to prove it. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. 3. Ginseng, the energy root. No, you don't need to break the bank or chase exotic remedies to harness the power of ginseng. Just small, steady doses can work wonders. Take Linda Carter, for instance, a 79-year-old retired night nurse whose story still sticks with me. For decades, she'd burned the candle at both ends, juggling grueling shifts that left her body a shell of its former self. Chronic fatigue had settled in like an unwelcome guest, and her immune system was so battered she could barely fend off a common cold. What started as a sniffle often spiraled into something nastier. Pneumonia became her recurring nightmare. Every change of season filled her with dread, a quiet anxiety that gnawed at her. "I'm scared to see my grandkids," she confessed to me one chilly afternoon, her hands trembling and icy cold, her voice barely above a whisper. She wasn't just tired. She felt fragile, like life was slipping through her fingers. I suggested she try ginseng, not the overhyped, overpriced stuff you see in flashy ads, but the real deal, a 6-year-old root, aged to perfection for maximum potency. I told her to keep it simple. Slice off a thin piece, about the size of a quarter, and steep it in warm water each morning. Keep the water at 160 degrees Fahrenheit, I said, hot enough to coax out the good stuff, but not so hot it kills the magic. If the earthy, slightly bitter taste turned her off, I recommended a dab of honey, just enough to smooth the edges without drowning the flavor. Drink it first thing, before the day gets its hooks in you, I advised. She nodded, skeptical but desperate enough to give it a shot. 3 months later, I barely recognized her. Linda walked into my office with a bounce in her step, her cheeks flushed with a rosy glow that hadn't been there before. "I don't feel like I'm dragging a chain behind me anymore," she said, her eyes bright. By the 6-month mark, winter rolled around, a season that used to send her into hiding, and she breezed through it without so much as a sniffle. No tissues, no cough syrup, no late-night trips to the ER. A full year in, she sent me a photo that made me grin. There she was, strapped into a roller coaster, arms up, laughing beside her grandkids at an amusement park. "I'm not afraid anymore," she told me over the phone, her voice steady and strong. I didn't realize how much I'd been missing. Here's how to do it right. Get yourself a quality ginseng root. 6 years old is the sweet spot, when the ginsenosides, the active compounds, hit their peak. Slice it thin, no thicker than a dime, so it releases its essence without overwhelming the brew. Heat your water to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Use a thermometer if you're picky, but a gentle simmer just shy of boiling works too. Steep the slice for 5 to 10 minutes, letting the liquid turn a pale gold. If the bitterness bites too hard, stir in a teaspoon of raw honey. Nothing processed, keep it natural. Sip it slowly, first thing in the morning, before coffee or chaos creeps in. It's not a quick fix. It's a slow build. Your stamina will climb, your energy will stabilize, and over time, you might just feel like you've turned back the clock a notch or two. Linda's living proof. Ginseng doesn't just boost you, it brings you back. 4. Shiitake mushrooms, cancer's foe. Shiitake mushrooms are far more than a savory addition to your stir-fry or soup. They're a powerhouse of health, armed with compounds that bolster your immune system and wage war against cancer. I've seen their magic firsthand, and the story of Susan Brooks, a 75-year-old warrior from a small town in Oregon, is proof of what these humble fungi can do. Susan was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer at 68. She endured the grueling gauntlet of chemotherapy, hair gone, energy sapped, spirit battered. After months of treatment, the cancer retreated, but the victory felt hollow. "Chemo nearly broke me," she confessed to me one rainy afternoon over a cup of tea, her voice trembling like the leaves outside her window. "I can't go through that again. Every twinge, every ache. I'm terrified it's coming back." Her eyes, framed by deep lines of worry, searched mine for something, anything, to hold on to. I'd been reading up on shiitake mushrooms, not the fresh ones you toss into a risotto, but the dried ones, gnarled and unassuming, packed with a potent arsenal of compounds like lentinan and beta-glucans. Studies out of Japan and China had caught my eye. Lentinan, a polysaccharide unique to shiitakes, had shown promise in clinical trials for boosting immunity and even shrinking tumors. Beta-glucans, meanwhile, rev up your body's natural killer cells, those microscopic assassins that hunt down rogue cancer cells. I wasn't promising Susan a miracle, but I had a hunch these mushrooms could give her a fighting chance. "Here's what you do," I told her, leaning forward. "Take 2 dried shiitakes, about 10 grams total, soak them in warm water for 20 minutes until they soften. Then toss them into a pot with 4 cups of water, bring it to a boil, and let it simmer for 15 minutes. Strain out the mushrooms if you want, or chop them up and leave them in for texture. Add a splash of lemon juice at the end. It brightens the flavor and helps your body absorb the nutrients. Drink a cup of that broth every day." Susan raised an eyebrow, skeptical but desperate. "Mushrooms? That's it?" she asked. I nodded. "Consistency's the key. Give it time." 2 months later, she called me, her voice lighter than I'd ever heard it. "I'm sleeping through the night again," she said. "No more waking up in a cold sweat, wondering if I'm dying." By the 6-month mark, she'd gone in for her routine scans and blood work. Her doctor called her back, puzzled but pleased. Her immune markers, white blood cell counts, T-cell activity, were through the roof, better than they'd been in years. The cancer? No sign of it. 5 years later, at 73, Susan's still thriving. Gardening, laughing with her grandkids, living without that shadow over her shoulder. "I'm not scared anymore," she told me last month, her eyes shining with a quiet triumph. "Those mushrooms, they're my little guardians." So, what's the science behind this? Dried shiitakes are nutritional dynamite. Lentinan, extracted from their cell walls, doesn't just sit there. It signals your immune system to wake up and fight harder. Research from the University of Tokyo showed it can enhance the effects of chemotherapy while protecting healthy cells, and a 2015 study in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine found that regular shiitake consumption improved immune function in healthy adults within weeks. Beta-glucans, meanwhile, are like rocket fuel for your macrophages and NK cells, helping them sniff out and destroy cancer cells before they can take root. Plus, shiitakes bring antioxidants, vitamins like D and B6, and minerals like selenium to the table, all of which fortify your body against disease. How do you make this part of your life? It's simple, but the details matter. Start with high-quality dried shiitakes. Look for ones that are dark brown, slightly curled, and aromatic, not brittle or powdery. Soak them in warm, not hot, water, about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, for 20 to 30 minutes to rehydrate them and release their goodness. Too hot, and you'll degrade some of those precious compounds. Boil them gently in water. 4 cups is plenty for 2 mushrooms, and let them simmer until the broth takes on a rich, earthy hue. You can strain it for a clear broth or keep the mushrooms in for extra fiber and flavor. That splash of lemon juice I mentioned? It's not just for taste. Vitamin C enhances the bioavailability of the beta-glucans, giving your immune system an extra edge. Sip a cup daily, warm or cold, and store the rest in the fridge for up to 3 days. Susan's not the only one who's benefited. I've shared this with friends fighting colds, folks recovering from surgery, and even a guy who just wanted to feel less run down. The feedback's been consistent. More energy, fewer sick days, a sense of resilience they hadn't felt in years. Is it a cure-all? No. Cancer's a beast, and mushrooms aren't a replacement for medical care. But as a daily ritual, a shield against the wear and tear of life, shiitakes have earned their place in my book. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 3 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, Let's move forward.